I used to believe that love means never asking why, until love started sending me invoices. My name is Emma. I am 33, and I live in Dallas, Texas. I am pressing record tonight because my chest feels tight with a kind of quiet anger that only family can teach you. If you are new to my channel, I tell true stories about betrayal inside the walls that are supposed to protect us. I do not name and shame. I do not drag anyone. I do something else. I put the facts on the table like clean silverware, and I ask you to look with me. If this were your life, would you do what I did? The sentence that raised me was simple. In this family, we help without questions. I believed it with the devotion of a hymn. When the power bill came late, I paid it. When someone needed a ride to the clinic, I left work early. When my cousin locked herself out, I drove across town in the heat that makes the road wobble in the air. I told myself that kindness is not a ledger. I told myself that love is a river, not a pipe with a valve. But rivers flood when no one builds banks. The first clue arrived like a fruit bruise that looks small but hides a rotten center. A grocery run that should have been an easy swipe turned into a declined card. The cashier asked me to try again and smiled the way people smile when they want to make your embarrassment gentle. I used a different card. It went through, and I laughed it off. I said the machines are fussy on a weekend. I went home and opened my banking app. That was when I saw it. A quick transfer out of the household account to another checking account. Same bank. Done a few minutes before I reached the register. The description said, "Send now, please. No initials, no purpose, just urgency." I did not panic. I texted the family chat. "Hey, did someone move money for a bill?" Green bubbles bounced. My mother said, "Probably your uncle. He mentioned the water company." My uncle responded with a thumbs up. No receipt appeared. No screenshot of a confirmation number. Just the soft blanket of trust that covers everything, until it does not. A week later, it happened again. This time, the electric bill nearly missed the grace period. I kept telling myself stories that were easier to believe. Maybe the autopay failed. Maybe the bank did a random hold. Maybe. Tonight I want to tell you about the day the maybes ended. I want to tell you how a sentence on a bank screen cracked my foundation, how a smiling bank manager taught me that love needs paperwork, and how I learned a way to answer betrayal that does not punch or post, but still reveals a sharp edge. It is a plan that cuts clean, not deep, and it leaves a scar you can live with. Before I go further, I need you to know what I felt at the start. This is the human part, the messy part. I felt stupid. I felt used. I felt like an unpaid intern in my own life, and I felt disloyal for even thinking that about people I adore. That conflict is a hot fog, and when it rises, your own reflection looks like a stranger. If you have ever stood in a kitchen and stared at a stack of bills while your phone buzzed with a message that said, "Send now, please," you already know the temperature of that fog. I am here tonight because I want more than catharsis. I want clarity. I want to bring you with me through each doorway in this house of money and love. And I want your judgment at the end. If you were me, would you act the way I did, or would you find a better door? The next morning I made coffee and opened my laptop like it was a witness stand. I am the person in my family who loves spreadsheets. I color code. I add notes. I put a little green check mark when a bill is paid. It calms my brain the way some people knit or garden. That morning, the spreadsheet felt like a crime scene. I pulled the bank statements for the past 18 months and laid them next to the bill tracker. My hands did not shake. They did something worse. They moved with certainty. Pattern hunting is not as dramatic as television, but there is a rhythm to it. First, you look for frequency. Then you look for timing. Then you look for the language of the withdrawals, the memos, the whispers the bank records leave behind. The household account had always been simple. Paycheck transfers in on the 15th and the last week of each month. Auto pays for electricity, water, internet. And the little budget line I call life happens for broken sprinklers and surprise dentist visits. Starting about a year and a half ago, there were new movements, small transfers at first, 40 here, 60 there, always within 2 days of a bill. The memos were not bills. Send now, please, urgent. Will explain later. I clicked into one and saw that it was an instant transfer to another checking account at the same bank. Last 3 digits, 218. I did not recognize it. I clicked another. Same destination. I clicked a third. The memo field was a single word, now. I rubbed my eyes and heard an echo of my mother's voice from when I was little. Emma, money is just a tool. We do not worship tools. We use them with care. It is a beautiful sentence. It does not tell you what to do when someone else uses your tools to build a house you never asked to live in. I pulled the family chat back up and scrolled. The rhythm was there too. The steady drip of need presented as urgency. Hey, could you spot me for the water? They messed up the autopay again. Hey, the phone bill hit early. Can you move a little from the house account? Hey, send now, please. I will show you the receipt later. Later is a wonderful place. It is where accountability goes to stretch out and take a nap. I decided to stop living in later. I called my bank. The woman who answered had the kind of voice that makes you unclench your jaw without noticing. I explained that there were transfers I did not recognize to a related account. She asked me a set of questions that felt like stepping stones across a fast creek. Did I share login credentials? No. Did I have auto transfers set up to any person? No. Did I have alerts turned on for outgoing transfers? I thought I did. Turns out I did not. She said, "We can freeze the account while we verify." My throat tightened. Freeze the household account and miss a bill. Freeze the account and start a family war. I told her I needed another option. She said, "You can set the account to view only for now and open a fresh operating account. We can also pull a list of the last 10 incoming and outgoing accounts tied to you and print it for pickup." She paused. A lot of people do that when they need to have a conversation with evidence. Evidence. The word made a door appear in the fog. I drove to the branch on Lemon Avenue and asked to speak to a manager. Her name was Ms. Alvarez, a woman with silver bracelets that chimed when she typed. I explained that I run the household account for my family, that money was moving in ways I did not authorize, and that I needed clarity, not drama. She nodded in a way that said she had seen this movie 100 times and still respected the plot. She printed a stack. She highlighted the last numbers of the destination account, 218. She showed me how the transfers were initiated from a saved payee labeled household helper. The label was mine from years ago when we paid the handyman, somewhere along the way. Someone had reused that label for a very different purpose. She showed me how to turn on alerts so bright they could wake a sleeping giant. She added a note to my file that any in-person changes required my physical signature and identification. Then she gave me something I did not know I needed. A sentence. She said, and I quote, "Love works best with transparent systems." It landed in me like a key in the right lock. Not a moral lecture, not a weary warning, a simple, actionable truth. I walked out with a folder that felt heavier than paper and lighter than shame. I am telling you all this because the feeling of being used is not just about dollars. It is about narrative. When someone borrows your story of yourself, they spend it the way they spend your money. I am the reliable one. I am the helper. I am the one you do not need to explain things to. Those lines make a character that people lean on. And if you are not careful, you wake up to realize the character has been driving and you have been the set decoration. I went home and wrote 3 lists. I call them the 3 ledgers of the heart. List 1 was facts, dates, amounts, memos, account endings. List 2 was impacts, bills paid late, fees charged, time spent resolving. And the punch I felt when the card declined. List 3 was values, the sentence my mother taught me, the kind of family I want, the kind of woman I want to be. Then I took a breath and chose my revenge. If the word makes you flinch, stay with me. I do not mean slash and burn. I do not mean public shaming or righteousness dressed as entertainment. I mean a response that restores proportion. I mean a plan that makes the cost of the behavior fall where it belongs, with no screaming, no broken plates, and no posts that make Thanksgiving weird for the next decade. I mean a kind of justice you can carry in your hands without cutting your palms. The plan had 4 steps. Step 1, build a clean wall. Step 2, call a meeting at the dinner table. Step 3, Offer a contract that turns help into structure. Step 4. Let the paper do the talking. Step 1 was the clean wall. I opened a new operating account with my bank and nicknamed it House Sunlight. I moved the auto pays there, one by one, and I set alerts that pinged me and another email address I created just for documentation. A quiet little inbox named Receipts and Rain. I left the old household account as view only, still visible to me but unable to bleed. If you want to try this, talk to your bank and tell them exactly what you need. You are not asking for a favor. You are asking for a tool to use with care. Step 2 was the dinner table, in my family. Sunday dinner is a ritual that pretends to be casual. We take turns hosting. That week was my turn. I cooked chili, the recipe that fills the house with cumin and kindness. My mother came with cornbread and a container of something she would not name, which is her way of keeping power and joy. My Uncle Ray dressed like he was late to a barbecue that started last spring. My cousin Tasha arrived with a tote full of laundry, which was an old joke that had stopped being funny. My brother Mark was quiet, which he is when the world is not. We ate, we laughed. I told a story about a cat at my apartment complex that insists on patrolling the hall and escorting people to their doors. Then I cleared the plates and brought out the folder from the bank. The room thinned. That is the only way I can say it. Laughter is thick. The truth makes air move in a different way. I said, "I love us." I said, "This folder is not an accusation, it is a map. It is what happened and what needs to happen next." I laid the statements down and pointed to the pattern. I showed the 218 destination. I showed the memos that said, "Send now, please." I showed the timing. The way these transfers hugged our bill, dates like shadows. I did not raise my voice. I did not use the word theft. I did not say, "How could you?" I said, "I need to know who this account belongs to and what the money paid for." My mother picked up a page and squinted. "The way she does when she wants to borrow my youth with her eyes," she said. "Emma, it must be a mistake." I nodded and kept breathing. My Uncle Ray coughed into his fist. My cousin Tasha, who had never developed a poker face, flushed a slow red that started at her collarbones and climbed. My brother Mark rubbed his thumb across his palm. An old tale from childhood, we were a family of small noises. I let the silence expand. Silence is not empty. It is an instrument. If you hold it like one, people will either sing or confess. Tasha broke first, she said. "It was me." The words were a whisper pretending to be brave. She looked at me and then down, then at me again. She said, "I always meant to pay it back. It was supposed to be temporary. There were some fees and a streaming subscription, and then a bigger thing, and it snowballed." She did not say what the bigger thing was. She said, "I am sorry. Okay, I was going to tell you, but you are always so busy and I did not want you to be mad." There it was, the confession wrapped in a compliment that was actually a criticism. You are responsible, and that makes you intimidating, and that makes me a victim of your reliability. I kept my face steady and said, "The account ending in 218 is yours." She nodded. My Uncle Ray began to interject, and then did not. My mother put her hand on Tasha's back like a small boat that wanted to push her to shore. I could have cried. Instead, I did something harder. I kept the plan. I said, "Thank you for telling me. Now I need to know amounts." She looked at the paper like it was a snake. I turned the spreadsheet around for her to see my work. I had already totaled the transfers. It was a number that did not destroy a life but did disrespect it. She said, "I cannot pay that now," I said. "I am not asking you to pay it now. I am telling you how we are going to handle money from this day forward." I pulled out the contract. Yes, I used that word at the table where I learned to pass salt hand to hand. The heading said, Household Support Agreement. It had 3 pages. The first page described the purpose. The second page described the process. The third page was signatures and a little square I had left blank on purpose. The purpose was tender. Not legalese, it said. Our family values generosity and clarity. This agreement protects both. The process was simple. 1. There is a new account used only for bills. 2. Any request for money that is not a bill will go through a written form attached to this contract, with a reason. an amount, and a date for return if it is a loan. 3. Reimbursements require original receipts. 4. If a loan is not repaid by the date, further loans are paused until a plan is made in writing. 5. This agreement is a living document that we can revisit at the start of each season. 6. We do not move money that is not ours. The square on the last page was a box labeled My Part. I had printed one for each adult. I said, before we sign, I want each of us to write one sentence about how we personally will contribute to clarity. It could be as simple as, I will not ask for money by text, or I will check the account before I pay a bill, or I will not say later unless I mean a date. Tasha's eyes filled. She said, You turned this into homework. I nodded. I said quietly, Accountability is the only homework I still do by choice. I want to pause here and say something to anyone watching who feels their chest get tight for Tasha. I get it. Life is expensive and complicated. Sometimes people slide, sometimes people drown. Not every transfer labeled urgent is a lie, but urgency cannot be the language of every day. I would have helped if she had asked with clarity. I still will, if the help is about the problem and not the pattern. My mother signed first. She wrote in the box, I will ask before I explain. It was not the sentence I expected. It was better. My Uncle Ray wrote, I will offer time before I offer your money. He said he would drive Tasha to a part-time shift he had heard about. My brother Mark wrote, I will check the calendar and the balance each Friday. He is quiet, but he notices. When it was Tasha's turn, she took a long breath and wrote, I will pay what I owe, and I will tell the truth early. I signed last. My sentence was, I will be generous, and I will require proof. Revenge, you see, can look like paperwork. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen while my mother wrapped leftovers. Tasha stood in the doorway and flicked her nails so softly the sound was almost nothing. She said, I am not a thief, I said. I did not say you were. She said, You did not have to. I could have hugged her. I could have said 1,000 comforting things. I chose a sentence that was uncomfortable instead. I said, We are going to be better than this. I set up her repayment plan the way Ms. Alvarez suggested, with small automatic transfers to my new account, labeled with the original dates so my records would match. I did not charge interest. The cost was already paid in my stomach the day the card declined. For a week, the house felt different, lighter in some ways, tense in others. The alerts pinged. The bills cleared. My phone did not say send now, please. I slept. Then, on a Thursday night, the old account showed an attempted transfer to 218. It failed. The system rejected it because I had changed the permissions. A text message appeared on my lock screen anyway. It said, The bank is broken. Can you fix it? I stared at it and felt something I had not allowed myself in months. I felt a smile that was not bitter. The bank was not broken. The pattern was. I saved the screenshot to the receipts and Rain inbox because my future self would want the record. Then I wrote a reply that was short and kind. I said, The new process is in the agreement. I believe you can do this. The next line I'm going to say belongs in the small museum of sentences that change a life without raising their voice. She wrote back, Fine. Then, a minute later, she wrote, Can you help me make a budget? I do not know if she meant it as surrender or growth. Maybe both. Both is allowed. If you are still with me, thank you. If you are angry on my behalf, breathe. I promised a plan with a sharp edge and no blood, and I am giving you exactly that. But there is one more door I had to walk through, the one where the bank manager becomes more than a cameo, the one where the word audit stops being scary and becomes a way to give everyone the right size of responsibility. If you were me so far, would you have put a contract on the table? Would you have kept your voice level when the person you love flushed red? Would you have chosen to be precise instead of explosive? I want to hear you. I want to know if there is a smarter step 3 than a signature. There is a scene I have not told you in full, because even now it makes me wince, and also because it is where the story stops being private frustration and starts being public consequence. It was a rainy Saturday, the kind Dallas does not do halfway. The parking lot at the discount grocery looked like a shallow lake. I had a list that was more hope than plan, and a coupon folder that made me feel like my grandmother walking beside me, clicking her tongue at every full-price label. I slid the cart through the puddle and filled it with the same ritual we all perform when we want to take care of people. Rice, beans, eggs, milk, onions. That particular salsa my brother swears tastes like sunlight. I moved to the checkout and stacked the belt the way my father used to stack firewood. Tidy and intentional. When the total landed, I knew it by heart. The clerk told me the number. I slid my card, declined. She tilted her head. Try again. I did. Declined. She offered me a smaller smile this time and asked if I had another card. I did, and it worked. But the heat that climbed my neck was not about embarrassment. It was about a flash of understanding that felt like a thin wire pulled tight. Someone had taken the choice to be generous and turned it into a trick that made me rescue us from a problem I did not create. I put the second receipt in my pocket, like a promise to my future self to fix this, or stop pretending I could live inside a story that was eating me. A few days later, after the dinner and the signatures, I called Ms. Alvarez and asked if she would be willing to do something unusual. I wanted to conduct what I called a kindness audit. I wanted a neutral set of eyes to put numbers to our habits, not to shame anyone, but to give us a mirror. I did not expect her to say yes. There are policies, there are liabilities, there are 1,000 reasons people say no when you ask for help that reaches beyond the counter. She surprised me. She said, I cannot share anyone's private data, but I can explain structures. If your family wants to sit in my office and ask me how to make a system that protects love, I can teach that all day. 2 Sundays later, we sat in her glass-walled office on Lemon Avenue. A small family gathered around a bigger truth. My mother wore her church dress even though it was not church. My Uncle Ray took off his baseball cap and flattened it against his knee. Tasha tucked her braid into her sweatshirt and looked at the floor, then at me, then back at the floor. Mark had a notebook and a pen and a posture that said he was building a bridge inside his head. Ms. Alvarez greeted each of us with the same sentence. Thank you for coming. She offered water and the kind of lemon candies that live in cut crystal bowls in bank lobbies that never change. Then she did something that set the tone. She turned her computer monitor so we could all see a blank spreadsheet. The tabs at the bottom were named with words that did not threaten: bills, discretionary, requests, agreements, notes. She said, we are not here to talk about blame. We are here to talk about flow. Money is flow, and when the river overflows, it is usually because there is no bank on one side. She clicked into the Bills tab and typed the usual suspects with a speed that told me she had typed these words 1,000 times for 1,000 families. Electric, water, internet, rent, insurance, groceries. She turned to me. What are the average amounts? I told her. She filled them in, column by column. Then she asked a question that punched clean through the fog. Who approves changes to this list? We all looked at each other like kids in a classroom where no one did the reading. She smiled in a way that made it safe to be honest. She said, in a functioning system, changes to the bills list require agreement, not urgency. If you add family phone lines, that is a decision, not a surprise. She created a second table called requests. She said, this is where we put life happens, car trouble, a medical co-pay, a school fee, a wedding gift you want to give that is bigger than your monthly fun line. There is nothing wrong with this table. It is beautiful if used cleanly. The problem is when everything lives here. And it all says urgent. Then she clicked to the third table and typed, agreements. She said, this is the page most families skip, and the page that saves the most fights. Agreements are the rules we write when we are calm, so we do not have to invent rules when we are scared. She turned the screen and pointed at the top row. The sentence in bold said, we will not move money that is not ours. Under it she typed, we will ask with details. We will say no without apology when the request harms the bills table. We will revisit this every season. It was not fancy. It was not even particularly legal. It was sturdy, like a good porch step you trust with your full weight. Tasha raised her hand the way she used to do in high school when she wanted permission to breathe. Ms. Alvarez nodded. Tasha said, What if emergencies do not wait for seasons? Ms. Alvarez said. Then, an emergency fund is your most faithful relative. She clicked open a fourth tab called Cushion and sketched a small plan. $20 a week until it grows teeth, a rule that says you must put the money back after the emergency passes. A reminder that an emergency is a surprise medical bill, not a flash sale on a television. I watched my family watch the screen. In their faces I saw childhood and groceries and every fight my parents ever had about whose turn it was to carry the heavier thing. I saw the glittering ache of being a person who wants to be good and is not always good at it. I also saw relief. Systems are kinder than secrets. There was one more piece I needed, and I felt the familiar fear that asking would sound like punishment. I asked anyway. I said, Ms. Alvarez, can you explain what happens in this bank if someone uses another person's saved payee label to move money without permission? She did not blink. She chose her words with the precision of a surgeon. She said, We take authorization very seriously. If access was not given, the bank can investigate. But the healthiest outcome in families is to make it impossible to move money without the right approvals, rather than to create a crime where there could have been a conversation. She looked at Tasha, then back at me, then at my mother. Her gaze was steady and not unkind. She continued, I can help you set up a dual approval system for any transfer that is not an auto bill. 2 logins, 2 green lights, no exceptions. It is slower. It is also safer. I said yes so fast I surprised myself. My mother nodded hard enough to move the air. My Uncle Ray said, That sounds like a lot of typing. But okay, Tasha whispered. I understand. When we left, the air outside felt like it had been washed. Ms. Alvarez had not scolded us. She had given us an architecture. The revenge I had chosen, that sharp edge wrapped in paperwork, had grown a spine. It was not about catching someone again. It was about making catching unnecessary. At home, I did the unglamorous work. I built a shared folder with copies of the bills and the receipts. I called it House Sunlight, the same name as the new account, because words matter, and I wanted ours to say what we were doing. I set up a separate email that all of us could forward receipts to. I taught my mother how to scan with her phone, and I wrote a 1-page guide in big, friendly font for anyone who forgot. I made the budget simple on purpose. If you cannot explain it out loud in 1 minute, it is a trap. That week brought tests that felt like pop quizzes. A cousin asked for a loan for a new tire. We opened the requests page, filled the form with the amount, the purpose, and a date for return. We approved it. He sent a photo of the receipt with the tread number circled and the date stamped. I forwarded it to the receipts and rain inbox and felt like I had just put a fence around a garden that used to be eaten by deer. Another test came at 9 at night on a Wednesday. Tasha texted, Can I move $50 for a subscription I forgot about? I wrote back, The requests page is open and you can put it there, but subscriptions are not emergencies. She did not reply for 10 minutes. My stomach did its old trick where it makes thunder without sound. Then she wrote, You are right. I canceled it. The house did not tilt. The sky did not fall. We survived a no. There was one more door I promised to open, and here it is, the human one. Numbers are easy compared to feelings. Revenge, even the kind I practice, is not complete unless it speaks to the wound it answers. Being used is not just a math problem, it is an identity problem. Who am I if I am not the helper without questions? Who am I if I ask for proof? I wrestled with that quietly for days, because the new habit of asking costs me something. It costs me the little thrill of being the hero. It costs me the applause you earn when you solve a crisis you had no hand in building. It costs me the story of myself as a person who can carry anything. I went back to the sentence Ms. Alvarez gave me. Love works best with transparent systems. I wrote it on an index card and taped it to the inside of my pantry door. Every time I reached for the rice or the cinnamon, I saw it and said it out loud. I wanted it to live in my mouth so it would come out when I was tired and somebody said, Send now, please. And my old instincts tried to wake up. A few nights later, I stood at my kitchen window while the rain finally thinned to a mist. Across the way, the cat who patrols the hallway sat under the eaves, patient and damp. I opened the curtains all the way and pushed the window up an inch to let in the smell of wet asphalt and the sound of a city taking a breath. There is a kind of quiet that only comes after a storm you survived on purpose. It is not triumphant. Exactly. It is balanced. I picked up my phone and recorded a voice memo that became the bones of this video. I said my name and my city and my age and the piece of my heart that hurt and the piece that was healing. I did not use adjectives like villain. I did not pretend I was above the mess. I told the truth. And I attached receipts. If you are listening to this with your own folder of bank statements open, I want to offer you a small script. It is 2 sentences, and they have saved me at least 3 times since the grocery store day. Sentence 1, I want to help, and I need details to do that well. Sentence 2, no is a complete sentence, and it protects our yes for when it matters. There is still one more chapter to this story. The part where consequences and second chances learn to share a room. The part where the person who hurt you tries to become the person who helps you repair the hurt they caused. And you have to decide what kind of narrator you want to be in your own life. If you were me, would you have invited the bank manager into the story? Would you have asked for dual approvals, even if it meant slower days and fewer heroic rescues? Would you have taped a sentence to your pantry door so you did not forget what you had already learned? Tell me. I am not pretending to be a guru on a hill. I am a woman in Dallas with a folder and a family and a window that finally opens without sticking. Second chances are not a finish line. They are a practice. You put them on each morning like a shirt you're not sure matches, and you hope the light is kind. The week after the meeting at the bank, our family group chat went strangely quiet. And then, because silence rarely holds in a house that speaks fluent urgency, it got loud again. A great aunt texted back in my day. We didn't need contracts to love each other. There were heart emojis from cousins who love a chorus more than a conversation. I typed 3 replies and deleted all of them. Then I sent 2 sentences that I had rehearsed with my therapist voice and my bank manager's spine. We're not replacing love with contracts. We're protecting love with clarity. No one replied for an hour. Then my mother sent a single thumbs up. Sometimes. That is what victory looks like, one tired emoji from the person whose approval you learned to chase before you knew the word approval. Tasha started her repayment transfers that Friday, $25, labeled with the original date, sweeping into house sunlight as if the river had remembered its banks. She texted me a screenshot. Not to prove anything, she said, but because it felt good to see the line move in the direction of responsibility. I told her I was proud of her, and then I put my phone face down and let myself feel the weirdness of being proud of someone for doing what they should have done months ago. Growth isn't always noble. Sometimes it is just relief dressed as progress. On Monday, my mother called and asked if I could stop by after work. Her voice had a paper-thin brightness I know too well. The kind that wraps around an apology like tissue around a glass. I brought over a carton of strawberries and a loaf of bread because groceries are our love language when we don't trust words. We sat at her kitchen table, the same one where she used to circle sale items with a blue pen while the radio told us how hot it would be. She poured 2 glasses of iced tea and looked at the condensation the way people look at a shoreline they know is about to change. "Emma," she said, "I need to tell you something before you see it some other way." I waited. There is a silence that demands and a silence that invites. I offered the second one. "It wasn't just Tasha," she said. The air thinned again, and the cicadas outside seemed to turn down their volume in respect. "A few months ago, your uncle's copay was higher than we expected. He didn't ask you because he said you were carrying so much. I moved a little from the household account and meant to put it back after I got my refund on something else. The refund never came." She swallowed. "I told myself it was fine because it was for family and it was for health, and I raised you on a sentence about helping without questions. But the truth is, I should have asked. I used our value as a permission slip." The confession landed like a stone that had been hovering in my chest for weeks without a name. I closed my eyes. Not to dramatize, but to locate the part of me that would not turn this into a performance. When I opened them, I saw my mother the way you see someone you love when you stop trying to be their student and become their peer. Her hands were folded around the glass, her knuckles pressed white, the way she used to hold my backpack straps on the first day of school every year, pretending she was adjusting them and not anchoring herself. I took out the folder. Yes, I had brought it. Because the version of me before this story would have brought cookies. But the version of me who walked through the bank door knew that love and paper can share a table. I slid the household support agreement toward her and tapped the square that said, "My part." "Will you write yours again?" I asked. But this time about moving money for anyone, even for something good. She nodded and wrote, slow and careful. Like a prayer, I will not use Emma's steadiness as a shortcut. I will ask. We opened the spreadsheet together. I added a line under Tasha's plan called Mom's Return, and I let my mother pick the weekly amount. She chose a number that would not hurt her budget, but would say out loud that responsibility wears her name too. Then I did something small and deliberate. I changed the color of both repayment lines to the same shade of green. I didn't want my screen to become a gradient of shame. We are a family. If we are going to code something, let it be hope. That afternoon, I drove my mother to the pharmacy. The sky was a watery blue with that Texas promise of heat, even when the clouds are trying to be generous. While we waited for her refill, she touched my elbow and said, "You were right to bring paper." I almost made a joke about my romance with office supplies. But I let the sentence land as it was. We are not a family that says you were right to each other. We are a family that cooks for you when you were right, and then pretends that the pie is the apology. Hearing the words unadorned felt like walking into a room I didn't know we owned. The next test came in a group chat named Cousins, mostly. A different cousin floated the idea of adding his girlfriend's phone to the family plan just for a few months. I watched the typing bubbles pop and vanish like fireworks without a finale. I could feel the old gravitational pull. This is small. This is easy. This is how we stay connected. This is just one more string tied to the kite. I put down my fork, wiped my hands, and wrote, "That belongs on the bills tab only if everyone agrees. Otherwise, it goes to requests, and it needs a date to end and a plan to pay. Family plan does not mean everybody's everything forever." Another cousin tried a softer angle. "Emma, we trust you with this stuff. Can you just add it and we'll sort it out later?" There it was again later. The hammock where accountability goes to nap. I replied with the script pinned to my pantry door, "I want to help, and I need details to do that well." He sent the details. We walked it through the form. He chose an end date. He committed to the cost. He sent the first contribution the same day and forwarded the receipt like it was a selfie from a hike he was proud of. The world did not end. The river stayed inside its banks. Let me tell you about the temptation I did not indulge. I did not make a video naming names. I did not gather the receipts like trophies and parade them for applause. I did not weaponize my audience's sympathy against my own people. The revenge I promised you is smaller and, I think, sharper. I became boringly consistent. I said the same sentences. I pointed to the same cells. I refused to be baited into a fight that could be solved with a form. It is not dramatic. It is absolutely devastating to a pattern that feeds on chaos. On a Thursday near the end of the month, my brother Mark knocked on my door after sunset. He stepped inside and stood by the open window, letting the night air cool the back of his neck. He said, "I think I know why this feels so big for all of us." I waited. Mark doesn't waste words. "We grew up measuring love in rescue missions," he said. "You changed the unit. Now we have to learn a new math." I thought about that for a long time after he left. A new math, the kind that says a clean no increases the value of a real yes. The kind that says a receipt is not mistrust. It's memory we can agree on. The kind that says asking for proof is not an accusation. It's a way to keep generosity from becoming addiction to being needed. 2 days later, I opened my email and found a message from Ms. Alvarez. Subject line, "Dual approval activated." Inside a clean set of instructions with screenshots. The banks of our river drawn with little green check marks that felt like handrails. I forwarded it to the family with a single line, "This will slow us down in all the right places," my mother wrote back. "Good." Tasha replied with a thumbs up and a screenshot of her calendar reminder labeled, "Pay Emma, be kind to future me." The last loose thread came from the universe's favorite writer coincidence. I ran into the grocery store cashier from the declined day. She recognized me, because humility always has a witness. "Hey, you're the lady with the coupons," she said, smiling. I nodded. "How's your week now?" It was a simple question, the kind that could have slid past me if I had been in the habit of surviving instead of noticing. I found myself answering honestly. "Better," I said. We drew some lines on the map. She laughed softly. "I like maps," she said. "They tell you when the river's supposed to stop." When I got home, I stood in front of the window again and pulled the curtains wide. Not for symbolism this time, but because the light felt like agreement. The patrol cat blinked at me from the hallway as if to say, "We're still watching." Yes, I thought, keep watching. Systems don't keep themselves. Here is where I ask you, my audience who has become this strange, kind jury if you had been me, would you have walked into your mother's kitchen with a folder? Would you have colored the repayment lines the same shade so your eyes couldn't turn accountability into a ranking of shame? Would you have told a great aunt that clarity doesn't replace love, it protects it? And when your mother admitted to the thing you feared she might have done, would you have asked for paper instead of penance,